and another one bites the dust. Well, guess what, guys? Another milestone has been achieved. We've hit 300 subscribers, and we're living the dream, baby. We're on the road, the righteous path of hitting 1K subs. It's looking more possible as the days go on, essentially. So we wanted to say thank you so much, guys. It's a pleasure. Yes, and I know I'm not gonna sing every single time we hit a milestone.
Please don't, bro. Please don't.
We're all gonna sing when we hit 1K because that's a huge milestone. So thank you.
We'll all sing. We'll all sing when we hit 1K.
So thanks to everybody who subscribed to our channel. We're hoping for much more,
And
many
go
more.
subscribe
Sorry,
now.
and yeah, essentially. But we're not gonna talk about that today. We're gonna make a separate video Q&A when we hit 1K when the time comes. But today's topic is Mr. Jake Debrusk is on the move. He's a huge trade target. Um, Heading into the NHL trade deadline this year, the 2022 NHL trade deadline. And the reason why this all started is because he fell out of favor with the Boston Bruins the last couple of seasons. He's not the same 40-point player he once was. He's been up and down the lineup, healthy scratched a couple of times, and then it led to him asking for a trade in December. And according to his agent, Rick Valette, it's because his client wants a change of scenery, meaning he does not want to be part of the Boston Bruins organization. He's on his final year of his contract where he's getting paid $6.75 million. I think that's right, or maybe I think I got the wrong number there.
No, it's
Actually,
not. It's
No,
6.7.
he's getting paid 3.6.
Yeah, but it's 6.75 total.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, my bad. I was it
Over
was
2
it was
years. You're not
decimal
wrong. You just
675. I was missing the first number. I don't know what happened there. So
it's
yes,
yeah.
yeah. So essentially 3.675 million. Uh, so he's definitely gonna be a piece that is gonna be likely heavily in demand for because he has a lot of potential. At 25 years old, he's far from a bust. We've seen how he's able to play when he plays with the right players and gets the right amount of minutes. But we see him playing elsewhere after the trade deadline and possibly on a contending team. So, do you want me to start with the first team, or do you guys have anything to say
I
beforehand?
mean,
Well, I mean, I just wanted to touch on the thing about him being a bust. I mean, technically, I mean, I mean, what's a bust really? I mean, like, he wasn't really drafted super high, was he? I don't think so.
He was
He was,
drafted in
he was drafted
the
15th.
first, yeah,
15th.
15th in the first round.
15 overall. I mean, he's doing pretty good for. He's doing exactly what a 15th overall guy would be. He's playing second line minutes. On a bad team, he would be playing first. It's more of I think I mean it's more of a like he just doesn't fit on that team. I think they have a lot of guys where they're big names like Taylor Hall and stuff like that, and it just doesn't mesh well. And they're going through a period where they have no centerman. Their team is getting old. Their window's closing. It's probably like a bad environment there, and I think that's why he's playing real
I wouldn't
bad.
say it's a bad environment. It's just a very confusing time in Boston. You have guys that are aging, that are, I would say, elite to franchise players on the team that have been there for many years, and then you have guys that are middle aged that have yet to hit their potential or their prime. Then adding a guy like Taylor Hall and adding all these Nick Foligno and so on in the offseason and last trade deadline, it pushes the Brust down the lineup. So that doesn't really help his case either. But we're gonna start off with the first team, the Edmonton Oilers. So the Edmonton Oilers, we all know Evander Kane is definitely gonna sign with the Edmonton Oilers, and we're gonna be talking about that when it's announced. We have a video already up.
I mean,
So
he could end up somewhere else too. You never know.
but I highly doubt it. I think Ken Holland and I
Yeah.
forgot who else went to meet him personally. Apparently, he was skating in Vancouver when Edmonton faced Vancouver. So all signs are pointing to there. So adding a guy like DeBrusk, a Edmonton native, um, would actually help their top six even more, especially after adding a guy like Evander Kane. What I see them doing essentially, Kailer Yamamoto, he has 1 year left on his contract as well. He's not really fitting with the Edmonton Oilers as he once did in his first season where he played amazing. And I think the 23-year-old winger would be a perfect swap for DeBrusk in a trade,
Um,
one for
I
one.
I look, here's my opinion on it, and it's not because I don't want to, like, nothing against the Oilers or whatever, but I think they have bigger fish to fry than to go for Jake Debrusk. What I mean by that is, like you said, there's a rumor about about Evander Kane potentially heading there, and I think that if you're Jake Debrusk, and there's been talks about him wanting a change of scenery, and yes, he's from Edmonton too. He was born there, so there is family ties and whatever in that as well. But I think if you look at the Oilers team and the roster and the way they're constructed, if you're bringing in a guy like Evander Kane, where does Jake DeBrusk go into the lineup? Like, where is he in terms of where he played in Boston
Agree.
and the lineup that he was in Boston? It's not going to be this. It's going to be the exact same thing in Edmonton. He's not going to play on the top two lines,
And I
probably,
agree too.
and he's not going to be able to be given an opportunity to shine in Edmonton, in my opinion. So, trading a guy like Kyler Yamamoto, yes, I understand that the Oilers are looking at that possibility. But I don't see a guy like Jake DeBrusk making sense for the Oilers in the sense that you're already going to get Evander Kane. Had they not gone to go get Evander Kane, let's say they decide, oh, we're not going to go get Evander Kane, we're not interested in him, whatever, then you want to make that deal for Yamamoto for DeBrusk. That one makes more sense. But now that there's a rumor about potentially Evander Kane going there, I don't see why that makes any sense for.
Not only that, but even just as a
DeBrusk.
GM that would be such a stupid trade. The guy's Yamamoto's 23 years old. He's proven that he's got something in the tank, and I think that on a team where he would play probably top minutes, or on a team where he would get more developing. Because the Edmonton Oilers, let's face it, I mean, they're not really known for development, right? All their big guys have been drafted in the early rounds, and their top, the top picks. But I feel like if they were to trade Yamamoto away, it wouldn't be for a guy that's 2 years older and that brings the exact same value. And
That's it.
essentially, I feel like they would probably go get a defenseman, which is something that they need, or maybe
Right,
throw
a
him in for a
goaltender.
goalie. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it would make no sense.
That's
trade
why.
away
Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, apart from the fact that Jake DeBrusk is from Edmonton, which I do think that it could still happen because he is from Edmonton, and going back home is something that I think could help and benefit him. I just
It's the new
don't.
trend now.
If he wants top 6 minutes, I personally don't think he gets it in Edmonton. I don't.
So we could all agree that Jake DeBrusk made sense before Evander Kane, but post Evander Kane, it's
Yeah, it
unlikely.
doesn't. To me, it doesn't really make sense. If you're bringing in Evander Kane,
Honestly, I would say even before Evander Kane, it would make no sense. You're essentially
I
swapping
think-
Yamamoto for an older Yamamoto.
yeah, but what I'm saying is, even without Evander Kane, let's say Evander Kane decides to go to Edmonton, you have more of an opportunity to kind of play with it in the sense that you can find the way to put him into the top 6 and see what happens. Well, now with it, let's say with Evander Kane potentially coming in, you've now got Zach Hyman, you've got Evander Kane, you've got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, you've got Jesse Puljujarvi, you've got guys that are already ahead of him.
David Draisaitl, so
That's
it doesn't make any sense.
Are the obvious ones.
And
So-
according to DeBrusk, he wants a top 6 role essentially, and he's not going to get it.
Get it in Edmonton.
So let's move on to the next team. Another trade proposal that makes sense is a swap between Dylan Strome, who's a center, which the Boston Bruins desperately need, and Jake DeBrusk. Not only that, both players need a change of scenery, of course. Both players have proven that they're excellent players when they play the right role and they're paired up with the right players. Essentially, both players have failed to maintain consistency, essentially, and also they fell out of favor with their respective teams. But what we both seen from both players is that when they're playing consistently and they're doing what they got to do, these are great players, man. But I think they could both benefit from a change of scenery.
Well, that one I agree with. I'm going to tell you why I agree with it for 2 reasons. One, I think DeBrusk in Chicago makes a lot of sense, right? They're a team that's kind of rebuilding. And, again, you've got a guy in Dylan Strome who there was rumors about him potentially asking for a trade too and whatever and not being happy. So
He was a healthy scratch too.
Yeah, but that's it. So in terms of not being happy, you've got a situation where 2 guys that are unhappy, you can find the way to move both of them.
So essentially, we'd say this is like an Alex Galchenyuk and Max Domi type of situation.
Yeah, but here's where my situation comes in, and this is why it makes sense for both teams. For Chicago, they're getting a guy who Jake DeBrusk he's still a decent hockey player. Jake DeBrusk is not a bad hockey player by any means, right? But what I like it from Boston's standpoint as well, because you're getting a guy in Dylan Strome who still has a lot of potential to become a decent player. What that means is that you can put him in a situation where you can put him on the second line, right, next to a Taylor Hall, next to a Craig Smith or whatever, and see what he's capable of giving you, right? Because Dylan Strome's played with guys like Patrick Kane, he's played with guys like Alex DeBrincat, he knows how to play with good players, right? He's played with Connor McDavid and Jr. too. The point is that if he goes to a team like Boston, who needs a center too, right? And I'm not saying that Dylan Strome's going to come in and change their center depth or whatever, but he's going to help. And so I think if you give him an opportunity to play on the second line, you have an opportunity where you can kind of play him with Taylor Hall and Craig
And
Smith.
no,
and
no,
kind of
not
see what he's
even.
capable of doing.
What I would do actually is the first line you leave it as is. So Craig Smith, Bergeron, Marchand. Second
Or
line,
or you put
Pasta,
Pasternak on the second line, yeah.
Pasternak, Strom centering
Yeah.
that line with Taylor Hall, and I think he could really, really benefit from
That's
those
it.
two
So
players.
I like it. I like it from that perspective too, because I could see a situation where DeBrusk goes to Chicago, and then with that being said, Strome goes back the other way, and I think it benefits both teams because DeBrusk is a guy that if you put him on the right line, let's say you put him with a Kirby Dach, okay, you've got Kirby Dach and Jake DeBrusk. Those are two guys that yes, Kirby Dach's struggling this season, not having the best season. But those are two guys that if you reunite them together, you've got a goal scorer in Jake DeBrusk who can put the puck in the net, and you've got a passer in Kirby Dach. And it works. And it's two guys that are young and a change of scenery. It may work. It may benefit Chicago in more ways than one. So I
think
like a potential deal in terms of Dylan Strome and Jake DeBrusk because I think it makes sense for both teams.
I think out of all the scenarios we have and the teams that are linked to Debrusk, I think this is possibly my favorite one because it makes sense for both teams.
Yeah.
They're both winners if a possible trade between these two teams happens
I
involving these two players.
It's not my favorite one.
Okay.
I think the next team you're gonna be mentioning is probably most likely the one.
Okay.
That,
So we're gonna skip. We're gonna go through Calgary really quickly.
Yeah,
Apparently,
yes.
they were very interested in him during the summer, and apparently they may want to revisit him again. They did lose Bo Bennett last season. He didn't really work out. He was a player that needed a change of scenery.
You mean Sam Bennett?
Oh yeah, Sam Bennett, Bo Bennett. Forget
Bo
it. That
Bennett,
guy's
former
done.
Penguin.
Yeah, it's
Former-
my bad. So I'm pretty sure they're cousins or brothers. Anyways,
I don't really think it matters.
yeah, it doesn't matter. So essentially, getting a guy to fill in Sam Bennett's spot, it's not a necessity essentially, but it's definitely nice to add extra firepower to a team that's in the Western Division where it's very tough when you're facing teams like Vegas, the St. Louis Blues, Minnesota Wild, the Colorado Avalanche. You
Yeah.
need all the depth that you can get, and I think adding a guy like DeBrusk would really benefit them. And like you already have a fantastic team. You have Tkachuk, you have Monahan, you have Manjapane, you have Goudreau, you have Coleman. Adding a guy like DeBrusk, that's just more fuel to the fire. And I mean, no pun intended. So essentially, I think that would make sense, but it's more of a luxury than a necessity compared to the other teams.
I just think that if the rumor is true that he wants top 6 minutes, where is he going to get it in Calgary?
And that's another
Because-
problem.
Because the other thing is too, Calgary have a bunch of really good wingers: Blake Coleman, Matthew Tkachuk, Elias Lindholm, Johnny Goudreau. Like those are. I just named you 4 wingers. That's your top 2 lines right there. Manjapane, like you've got guys that are already there that are playing really good. Why are you you're gonna get DeBrusk to do what? So you can put him on the third line or what? Put him on the second
Yeah,
line.
like I said, it's
you
it's
can
more of a
definitely
luxury, to
rotate.
be
You
honest.
can definitely rotate Blake Coleman and Jake
I mean,
DeBrusk.
but wherever
But
I don't
either
know. If,
way-
listen, he doesn't have a no move clause. So wherever he does end up going, I mean, he's gonna have to live with the fact that the results that he's putting up on a pretty decent Boston team. They're not bad by any means. He's still producing like a third line player.
So
At the
that's
end
what
of
I'm
the
saying.
at the end of the day, it's what you are. But he does have potential to be a great player. We've seen flashes of it, but he's got to accept the fact that wherever he ends up going, if he ends up going on a team, if he ends up going on a team that needs like that they have room to fit him on the top 2, then sure, put him on the top 2. But if you're going to like most likely Calgary or these contending teams, there's no way he's
You,
playing top two
you know
minutes.
what? You know one team that I think if he wants top
Top
6 minutes,
six, sorry, top
you know,
six.
you know one team that I think if he wants top 6 minutes would make a lot of sense. Seattle. And you know
Yes,
why?
yeah,
And you know why I think that? Because Seattle's a team that they're an expansion team, right? But yes, they're out of the playoffs, so you can experiment a little bit more. But I think because of the fact that Seattle is still a relatively new system and a new market, and they don't really have elite superstar talent, with Jake DeBrusk, if he goes to a team like Seattle and he gets power play time and he gets first line minutes or second line minutes, he may be able to turn his career around. He may be able to go to
and he
Seattle and
definitely will
find a way to
get that if
turn.
he goes there. To be
But that's what
honest,
I'm saying. So I think Seattle makes perfect sense. And if Seattle can find a way to trade someone back, like a Mason Appleton and maybe a draft pick,
yeah,
because I don't think Mason Appleton by himself is going to work, it
it
could
won't.
definitely
It
make a
won't.
lot of sense. So for me, I think if we're looking at teams that are going to put him in the top six, Arizona comes to mind, Seattle comes to mind. Those teams that are
Wait,
kind of
don't give
out of
away our whole list right now. We're not done.
I'm just giving you my thoughts, right? But I think Seattle makes perfect sense for him,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
just because we're gonna go through Seattle up, like you mentioned. I think Mason Appleton would be a good trade piece heading the other way, but obviously they're gonna have to
Yeah, they're gonna have to add a
add a
little
little bit more.
sweetener.
I just want to say thank you, Stephen L. I really appreciate it. We appreciate it. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, so definitely, I would say that like that would definitely work as a potential trade piece going the other way for Boston. But yeah, like we said, he wants a top six role. But going back to what Chris said, does he really like? Who are you essentially to have such a request?
Yeah,
You know what
you're
I
not
mean?
Crosby,
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yes, we've seen flashes of it, but like you've been on the part of trade rumors for the last year and a half now. We know that like your value is not the same value like it once was. So you have no, I would say essentially
and he
to
demanded for a trade, which makes the value go down even worse.
yeah,
I was
exactly.
just about to
And
say
it was
that.
publicly
Yeah.
it was publicly known. Thanks again, Steven. Appreciate it. So yeah, so like for him, like wherever he goes, be grateful as long like, and it's up to him to play to the standards of a top six forward if he wants those minutes, no matter where he goes. So let's move on to the next team, the Ottawa Senators. So Bruce Garrick mentioned
Bruce
that the
Arians, yeah.
Sens had talks with Boston during the offseason discussing a potential Jake DeBrusk deal. It makes sense. He would get top 6 minutes. He fits the system where they're all young guys.
Now he would definitely get top 6 minutes because Batherson's out, so the
Yeah.
Ottawa's got room to put a guy on the top six and test him out. So
So
that one
definitely, I
makes sense.
think they would circle back to that, um,
Absolutely.
and they want to add young pieces, and it totally makes sense because they're a
What would
young
they
team.
give up?
Not I wouldn't say maybe a second round pick and like something else. I know
I'm sure Ottawa can find, like, you know what? Call me
we've seen
crazy.
yeah
Call me
okay yeah
crazy, but a guy like Victor Mete could maybe entice Boston. And the reason why, and I'm not saying that would be the only deal, but I'm saying a guy like Victor Mete could entice Boston in the sense that Boston kind of needs some defensemen a little bit. And I think if you saw what they did with Mike Riley a couple of years ago, and how they turned him around and kind of
they
made
love
him
their
good.
Senators defensemen at
Yeah,
this
but
point.
that's what I'm saying. I think because of the fact that they turned Mike Riley around a long time ago, I think I'm Victor Mete deal to Boston in a package that, for Jake DeBrusk could make sense because Victor Mete doesn't really play that much in Ottawa. He's kind of a top six guy. I think in Boston he would be that sixth, seventh defenseman, but he's a good depth guy to have because he's not bad.
You
So
would
I
have
think
to add more to that deal.
of course, yeah,
Essentially,
yeah,
a
of course.
second round pick.
Ottawa would definitely have to add like a draft pick or something else for sure.
And
I
like
don't think,
Ottawa's
but I
second
think it
round
would make
pick
it.
is
That's a piece
essentially
that Boston would want.
and Ottawa's second round pick is essentially like close to a first if you really think about it because they're like
Yeah.
really like low in the standings right now. So I would really have to take that in consideration and as Boston and be like, you know what, maybe that's not a bad idea because technically it's like a late first if you really think
That's it.
about
But
it.
I don't know what the asking price is, but I would say like Victor Mete in a third round pick could make a lot of sense for a team like Boston.
I could see that happening.
So that would
I
be
was gonna
something that if you're
mention
Ottawa,
Brandstrom, but now thinking about it,
That's
apparently
too
he's got more
too
value.
expensive.
Yeah,
yeah,
he's got too much
it's way
value.
too much, and now he's actually playing on the right side. That he's supposed to be playing with the Ottawa Senators, and he's currently playing with the Ottawa Senators. So I don't think I think that was just like smoke up in the air that people were trying to create. Oh my God,
I
look,
just I
he's not
think
playing the right position. Let's move him.
yeah.
Like he's probably not happy. I think it was all a BS, to be honest.
I
I
just
think,
think if Ottawa trades Brandstrom, I think it's for a bigger piece.
yeah,
Yeah.
essentially.
Right. So that's yeah.
So we have a comment from Brave 181. Travis Sanheim from Philly would be a perfect fit for the Bruins. Yeah, I think
I
that's a
agree.
good piece,
I
to be
agree with that
honest.
one too.
I think if
And you
the
know what?
yeah.
Speaking of which, Philly, who's a team that's rebuilding, maybe Philly goes to Boston and says, "Hey, you know what? What do you guys want for Jake DeBrusk? Maybe we make a deal that involves obviously Boston would have to add, but I'm saying like you can get a situation where if Boston really wants Travis Sanheim, maybe Jake DeBrusk goes to Philly, and then Boston adds like a few couple of pieces to kind of
You,
make
you
that
have
work.
to take this into consideration.
It could work
The
definitely.
Montreal Canadiens and Philadelphia Flyers are going to be sellers, like sellers, like meaning big time sellers, not just like trading away depth or anything, like big time sellers for the first time in a very long time. So they're going to have a lot of interesting assets that they're going to be parting ways with.
Yeah,
So yes, this is definitely a good proposal. Thank you so much, Brave 181 87. That's definitely a fit we could potentially see. I think if Boston does add a defenseman, it's going to be someone that's not going to cost them too much, but is going to be able to play up and down the three pairings. So maybe a guy like Brett Kulak. In this case, he mentioned Travis Seinham. So I think those two would definitely fit Boston's decor. But moving away from that, because I don't want to get off topic, another team that's potentially interested in it. This is a trade proposal that I came up with. The Arizona Coyotes. So we know that Phil Kessel has demanded a trade out of Arizona. He's one of
yeah.
the few pieces that are left to be moved out of Arizona that hasn't been moved yet.
That guy should go for
So
another
maybe
cup.
a reunion with Boston makes sense, essentially. But also, Jeff Merrick said that Lawson Krause has been linked to the Boston Bruins. So potentially maybe Lawson Krause and a DeBrusk swap makes sense. Or maybe they're gonna have to give a
Yeah,
little bit more than that. But those are two names that could definitely be part of a package deal heading towards Boston for Jake DeBrusk. So that's gonna be very interesting to see
I like
Arizona pull off.
I like that a lot too because Kraus is a guy that can play everywhere in the lineup. He's a guy that can play first, second, third, fourth. It doesn't really matter. He's good at everything. But what I like about that is, it makes sense in the sense that Arizona's kind of trying to, find a way to get pieces. But if you're Boston, right, even if it's just about change of scenery, Boston Cross goes to Boston. He gets himself an opportunity to play in the playoffs.
I
But
think
it
he's
gets
gonna
changed.
kill it there if he goes there, to
Yeah,
be honest.
that's it, and it's a change of scenery for him. And Jake DeBrusk gets a fresh start in Arizona. And look, I mean, Arizona this season, yeah, they haven't been fantastic, but you know what? They've been competitive. They've
Put him
won
on
every
a
game.
line with Clayton Keller. He gets his top 6 minutes right
Yeah,
there. He's gonna
but
be
I think
freaking
what's good
fine.
about Arizona as a team in general, I'm saying they're a competitive team, but they're coached really well too. So I think you can get the best out of a guy like Jake DeBrusk in Arizona because of the fact that Andre Tourigny has done a good job there and in developing the players and getting the best out of the players. So I think he's a guy that maybe can get the best out of Jake DeBrusk if he ends up going to Arizona for sure.
So anything to
Yeah.
add, Chris, or can we move on to
Well,
the next one?
I agree with that. I disagree with the Phil Kessel part. I think I mean, it would make no sense to go trade a young guy for an older guy.
No,
So
I
I mean,
mean
if you
obviously
go
they're
for
gonna
a
have to
cup,
give a
if you
little
go
bit
for a cup
more or
run,
something.
you know,
if
uh,
you go for a cup run, it makes sense.
yeah, it does. But I mean, at the same time, like you're the Boston Bruins. Like after this year, there's like, it's not looking good for them. So
Yeah, it's a
I
very
don't.
confusing situation for them, of course. But like you never know, like you never know what the offers that Boston are receiving. So if Phil Kessel is mentioned, and he wants to go there and play, go back to Boston, I don't think that's bad at all, man. Like, I
No,
think I think that's fantastic, to be honest, and I think they could really use his services, leadership. They already have a lot of leadership, but also secondary scoring, and I think that's fantastic for them. But I think they're definitely going to want something younger in return for DeBrusque. But I mean, that's definitely an option to look at. Now moving to the New York Rangers. Again, Jeff Merrick from Sportsnet said that the
This
Rangers
this is
have
the
inquired.
yeah, this is the
Uh,
team I think he's gonna end up going.
yeah, they inquired about Jake DeBrusque, and like we suggested, um, a couple of episodes ago, I forgot which episode, but one of the trade rumor episodes, we No, actually, it was the New York
It was
Rangers
the
episode.
yeah. Why are the New
Yeah,
York Rangers so good?
yeah.
Yeah.
So you could
Check that
check
one
that
out.
episode out. We mentioned a potential swap between Philip Hiddle going the other way for DeBrusque, and
Yeah,
the
we
reason
had
why that
talked
would
about
make
that.
sense is because Hiddle is a centerman who's been struggling at that position. But maybe it's again change of scenery. Maybe the development in New York is not whatever. But we know Boston has a very good development team. We've seen what's come out of Boston's farm team. It's fantastic. So maybe if he goes there, he gets a proper development. He gets called up essentially, or he plays bottom line minutes for the start, and then he works himself up as the season continues, or maybe by next season, he could definitely play a second or third line role if he hits his potential, because he definitely still does have a lot of potential. So I mean that potential swap between those two players, I would say it makes sense actually for both teams.
Yeah,
Well, here's why it makes
I
sense.
agree.
Not just because of the value that each team is getting in return, but like trade like it's so easy for this trade to go through. They literally are what, an hour apart from each other, or an hour and a few
About
minutes
yeah,
apart. Yeah,
yeah.
so they don't have to fly tech, because so no COVID to worry about. They could just drive there, and this trade makes sense because they're getting a defenseman, they're getting a winger. It's both a change of scenery,
Well,
and I think
no, the Bruins would get a center, not a defenseman.
no, I meant one's getting a center, one's getting a winger. Did I say defenseman?
Yeah, he's a defenseman.
Yeah,
Sorry, my bad.
No, it's
okay.
all good. It's all
One's
good.
getting a center, one's getting a
Yeah,
winger. It's change of scenery. I think it could benefit both of them. I think DeBrusk could play really well in New York. And to be honest, I picture him wearing a New York Rangers jersey. And the other guy kind of does look like a Bruins player. Like, I'm just
I'll,
going from
I'll,
what I.
And
I'll be
also, I'll
honest.
also say one thing before Luca continues. They did lose a huge piece in Buchnevich, and getting a guy like
Yeah,
DeBrusk essentially would replace a guy like Buchnevich. So,
Um,
and at a cheaper price, essentially too. So,
yeah,
I think that makes sense. I think not only the trade that could potentially happen between these two teams, involving these two players makes sense,
yeah.
but also where they're going to be playing. Essentially, like I mean, in the lineup. So
I
I think between them and Chicago and what they have to offer, I think those are my two favorites of where the Brusque will potentially land.
I think it makes sense in the sense that you look at Jake DeBrusk. Like DeBrusk kind of fits in New York. I think it just the whole thing just makes sense. But I think the other thing is too, right? They're kind of in a position where the Rangers are gonna make a move. Like it looks pretty likely that they're gonna make a move. They're pretty much in on every single player possible. And so I do see a situation where if the Rangers do pull a trigger on the trade, it could be Jake DeBrusk. And we talked about it in the Why Are They So Good video about Jake DeBrusk being a good fit. So I think it makes sense again to kind of bring that up because I think it's a very real possibility that Jake DeBrusk could go to the Rangers. Like
and
very,
also
very
like
real.
just looking at their stats, I mean, like these guys are pretty. They're close to the same age. One's 22. Jake DeBrusk 25. This guy's
Yeah.
22. Their plus minus is similar. Their points are pretty similar. So
It's
I
just a
mean,
fair
it's
trade.
it's it's a fair trade. At this point, it's just you're literally just swapping to swap.
Would
Yeah.
you would
So
you think that
Change
Hiddle
of
would
scenery for change
benefit
of scenery,
from?
essentially.
Do you think that Hiddle would benefit from maybe being sent down and getting some time to work on his game and then getting called up like before the playoffs, or do you think he goes directly to Boston playing with them?
I think he goes directly to Boston, and I think him and Pasternak would be a pretty good lineup. I
Yeah.
think him
I
and
agree.
Pasternak playing together would be a good line.
I
I
think
agree.
you just throw him with the two talented people that need a center, and that would be Hall and Pasternak, and you see what he could do. Maybe he will really surprise you, and he could pull these wonders. We're down to our two last teams. I just want to get rid of this team because whatever, there's not really much to say about them, but we're going based off what Jake DeBrus demanded. He wants top 6 minutes, a team that could really use his services, and he fits the system because they're a very young team, the
Yeah.
Buffalo Sabres. So,
Mm,
I think him going there, essentially, they have the assets to give up for DeBrusque. Him going there, playing with Tage Thompson, I think that would be a good fit. You have Peyton Krebs, you have
I
Alex
agree.
Tuck.
Yeah.
That's I would say that's a good top six for the next 3 to 4 years. So that would make
I agree with
sense.
that.
When respecting his demands, but apart from that, there's really nothing much to say. But
Yeah.
closing off with this episode, we're going to be mentioning the Detroit Red Wings, and here's why. So
Mhm.
Yzerman surprised the whole hockey world last year at last year's trade deadline when he made a huge swap. I mean, it was not one for one; it was a whole blockbuster between Manta and Vrana. So, and that worked out in his favor, as we know. So let's say, and according to again Elliot Freeman from Sportsnet, saying that maybe Philip Zadina could use a fresh start. What if Zadina gets traded to Boston? Obviously, maybe it's gonna cost Boston a little bit more to acquire Zadina, or maybe they could do a one for one swap. But the Bruss going to the New York Rangers, where he's gonna get top 6 minutes, but also it's a change of scenery for both teams that they could both benefit from.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Detroit wins that deal if they make a. It's pretty one sided, if you ask
I
me.
think so. I think
I
so too.
listen. I think Zadina is a good player. Debrusk at the moment is a lot better, and I think if he goes to Detroit, if he would have went to, if this trade would have happened early on during the season, I think Detroit would be taking Boston's place in making the playoffs.
I
But now
I
that it's happening now,
Oh, but I
yeah.
mean, Detroit's
uh,
not that far away from a playoff spot, but they're by next year, I would say that they're going to be fighting for a wild card spot.
I think if you want to put a situation like again, it goes back to change of scenery for change of scenery. I think Zadina for DeBrusque kind of makes sense in the sense that both players want to change the scenery. But what I like is I like what Brave 187 brought up. Now I don't know if this is going to happen because I don't know if San Jose is going to be willing to trade him. But Thomas Hurdle would be a good fit in Boston, and he talks about potentially trading a first, Jake DeBrusk, and a good prospect. I think if San Jose is willing, if let's say for example Thomas Hurdle isn't interested in re-signing in San Jose, right, and he makes that clear before the trade deadline, and on one of his three teams that he's wants to go to, Boston's on the list. I can definitely see a situation where San Jose makes a move like that. But I think would be a fantastic fit in Boston. It's just a question of whether or not San Jose is willing to do it, and whether or not Hurdle would be willing to go to Boston too. But I think it's a good proposal if we're
Yeah,
looking at it from a
definitely.
standpoint, it's a good proposal. So thank you for the comment as well.
Yeah.
But going back to Detroit, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it goes back to Zadina. It's going back to change of scenery for change of scenery at the end of the day. I think Zadina in Boston would make a lot of sense. I think he would work in Boston, and I think DeBrusk in Detroit would make a lot of sense too. So that's one to keep an eye on for sure because I think Detroit could be definite players in this as well.
So yes, long episode for not a, you know, I would say
Huge name.
like a huge name,
he's
but
he's a name. He's a
but
Yeah,
like
name.
definitely someone that's been rumored to be on the move for a very long time. So we definitely had to make a video about this. There's a lot of names like Marc Andre Fleury that I think as time goes on and we get close to the trade deadline, we're going to be talking about him, making a video
yeah.
about him. The reason why we haven't made a video about Thomas Hurdle yet is because I think he's gonna. I think San Jose's stupid not to sign him. Essentially, I think Timo Meyer is gonna play a huge factor in convincing Hurdle to sign an extension with him. I mean, to sign an extension with them in order to play together, essentially. And I think it's really up to Hurdle now to decide whether or not if he wants to leave or stay. But I think guys like Timo Meyer and potentially Brent Burns are going to play a huge role in Hurdle staying with San Jose. But until then, we'll see what happens. We're taking it day by day now. We're looking at all the sports analysts right now, seeing what they're saying, and that's how we base off our videos essentially. Expect an Evander Kane video coming up really soon because that should be announced shortly. Apparently, he could be playing by as early as this weekend. So expect an announcement tomorrow or Friday, and we're going to be making a video as soon as possible when the news breaks. Last comment that Brave 187 says, does Boston go all the way this year or do something small? I think Boston, I think the furthest they go, honestly, is the second round.
I think he means in terms of
Like
does Boston go
trade
all
wise.
in terms of trade?
Ah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you never know actually, because when you look at them, this could potentially be their last year, and I think this is Rask's last year. You have Bergeron who needs to sign an extension, and you don't know if he's gonna come back or not because apparently there was rumors that he may be leaning towards retirement. He wants to retire on the top, opposed to like retiring when he's like literally playing like 4 line minutes or something, which I highly doubt that's ever gonna happen because it's Bergeron. Um, and so we don't know what's gonna happen there essentially. So maybe they say, let's blow it up and let's go all in, or maybe they say, let's take it, let's do something significantly small that helps our chances. but
I
maybe
agree.
next year, maybe we're still going to be competitive. But it really depends, what they're thinking right now. And I don't know what they're thinking. It's up to Sweeney and Cassidy to discuss that and see what they're going to do. But I just wanted to say
I agree.
uh, thank you so much, guys, once again for helping us reach 300 subs. We want to get 1K as soon as possible, and it's up to you guys essentially. So please continue to help to support us. If you like our content, subscribe to our channel. Check out other trade rumor videos that we made, or any videos essentially that we made in the past. And tell us what you guys think in the comment section below. If you agree with our trade destinations for Jake DeBrusk, if there's teams we're missing, if you like the trade proposals that we discussed, and if there's any videos that you would like us to make moving forward. But until then, thank you so much, guys. Until the next one.